Zensurance is Canada's leading business insurance broker, providing construction industry contractors and small business owners with the coverage they need in just a few simple minutes. Visit zensurance.com/DCN to get a free quote. You could save up to 35% on your annual premium. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Construction Record Podcast. I'm digital media editor Warren Frey, and with me today I have...
This is Scott Duke from OpnRoad.
And OpnRoad is involved in mergers and acquisitions and excavation. And usually when you hear mergers and acquisition story, and this could be our fault, it's the big boys. It's a huge company buys another huge company. But there's, from what I can tell, and Scott's going to tell me, more happening at the quote unquote smaller end of things than there is, or at least there is as much happening. So Scott, take it away. What is the mergers and acquisition situation in the non-giant company buying giant company space?
Yeah, I guess you're right. Like, people do think about the M&A space as these big conglomerates swallowing up someone who's also large. There's a whole ecosystem that is on the, as you said, and the word small is totally fine, the smaller end of the scale.
Right, sorry.
It starts, it's called Main Street. So Main Street, you're walking down Main Street, you're thinking about, the coffee shop or a bakery, that kind of thing. There's Main Street, and then it moves up to mid-market. And mid-market will take you anywhere to kind of $150 million a year in sales. We live and we operate with businesses that are doing under the 20 million. So this is businesses that would have, 15, 20 staff kind of thing. Maybe they're a husband and wife, they're still running the operation. But that's where we live. And there is a lot of activity in that space. Any company that's doing kind of driving to the bottom line around $150,000, $300,000, they are now kind of open the door, I say, to the private capital markets. They have made it available to themselves that they can now, sell their business.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of activity? Well, first I should ask: has COVID changed things, where people are like, "Well, I just kind of want to retire," or I have to get rid of my company, or have there been other reasons where people are like, yes, it's time to acquire a company, and so you kind of facilitate that? What's the ecosystem, I guess?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the COVID question is a good question, because everyone, when COVID initially was hitting, was doom and gloom, worried that it was just going to shut everything down. And it very well may have, if the government just didn't pump money into the system. The main thing that drives value of a business at the end of the day is the cost of capital. So the lower is no different than thinking about buying a house. Like, we've seen obviously massive rising in prices of real estate, but a lot of that's been driven by the reduction of interest rate. That's the same in companies, right? So if you're a business owner right now and you're thinking about selling, it's actually not a bad time, because the capital is so inexpensive that you will get a larger purchase price just because of that. Because that happened in the COVID environment, and because we had so much, new liquidity kind of pumped into the marketplace, there's just more sloshing around. So there's more money available, and a lot of companies, they actually did okay, especially in the construction sector, right? There was that blip where everyone didn't know what was going to happen, and then all of a sudden everyone's sitting at home and looking around their house, and they want to do an upgrade to it, or they want to put a pool in the backyard, or they want to do some kind of addition off the side of the house. That happened. So the construction sector, as you well know, has been doing fairly well through this, and because of that, the companies' valuations have gone up, and because interest rates are low, there's been a lot of acquisition, a lot of activity going on. So it's actually oddly a good time.
And besides COVID, as somebody doing this work, you get probably a very good idea as to why people, their main reasons for selling their company, or for conversely buying them. So what are some of those reasons for selling off a company? Yeah,
I mean, the traditional ones are people are getting to the age of retirement, so they need to exit because of that. The big one is actually burnout and frustration that people don't really know about. So the average entrepreneur will run a company. Construction sector is a little bit different. Like, people will be in it longer, but on average, when you kind of look outside of our industry, people will last about 7 years, entrepreneurs, and then they kind of burn out or they get bored. So it's, boredom and boredom. That's a primary driver. Like, this morning I had a call with a woman who is looking to sell her business, and that was the frustration, and burnout was the number one. And that's understandable. Like, all of us that are listening to this podcast that are running companies, we know it is a strenuous activity. So at some point in time, you're like, you know what? Let's just cash it in and relax a little bit. Maybe take a year off, or take 6 months off, or invest in the next endeavor, whatever it might be. Those are the big things: retirement, boredom, and burnout.
You're in Revelstoke, as nobody can see the camera but me, but I can see a giant pile of snow outside.
Yeah.
Previously I would assume you'd have to be in a major metropolitan area to make this kind of company work. You clearly are not doing that. You're in Revelstoke, which is it's not small, but it's a smaller area. So you're doing stuff remotely. How are you able to do that?
This is so just so people that are listening to the podcast know, like this community that I live in is 8,000 people, and it fluctuates up to 14,000 at our peak winter season because of people come here to snowmobile and they come here to ski. It's the heli ski capital of the world, but it's a nothing burger for sure. As like that's who says that? Kevin O'Leary. Anyhow, that's definitely true. It's been interesting because I started working here doing this business out of Revelstoke before COVID. COVID has definitely helped in that regard because everyone's shifted online, and it's made things a lot easier because those that weren't up to speed with the technology, even though it's a Zoom, right, were kind of forced into getting up to speed with it, which has made things a lot easier. The reality is in this space and in most spaces, there's a lot of consolidation going on in different industries. That is, these smaller companies that I'm talking about are getting acquired by larger companies as a method of growth by these larger companies. The larger companies are, I'm here in Revelstoke in Canada, but you're selling businesses to people that are in Washington or they're in Orleans or they're out of New York or whatever, right? This is all done virtually now online anyhow. And if you get into diligence, someone's going to fly out and see the company. But prior to that, getting all the way up to the point of getting an initial offer on the table, that can be done. I can do that from my house here in Revelstoke. And so it has been a very interesting career in that respect. And it's been a lot easier because of the shift to online and to digital.
And why excavation in particular?
So this is interesting as well. So basically we did, and this is very recent that we did this work. We were completely agnostic to who we were working with as far as an industry perspective goes. And this isn't even that long ago. Like 3 months ago, we were, call it agnostic. We would take anybody on as long as they had a certain threshold of revenue that they were meeting. That was kind of our criteria. And what we found is that it makes more sense to dive down and be industry specific because you can just become more of a knowledge expert in any particular space. And so then the question becomes, where do you go? Like, where do you end up diving down and diving deep? And for us, we did in our industry, there's a lot of, there's research that you can do. There's data, like data drives everything now. It's kind of like the new oil. So the big question is, okay, if we're going to use this data and figure out, what companies do we want to work with from a perspective, a revenue perspective and an earnings perspective. The excavation industry is actually, when we did the big dive, we came up with 45 industries that have margins, net margins, the profit that they would take home at the end of the day from the revenue at the top line to bottom line of above 10%. Most businesses make that 10% or 5% net margin, right? The excavation landscaping industry, those that are running an efficient operation are running around a 20% margin, 15 to 20%, which is very attractive to investors. So that was kind of like our first screen. And in that screen, like I said, we ended up with 45 industries. From there, we narrowed it down again, saying, okay, who could benefit most from our services that is maybe not as directly connected with what we call the private capital markets, because you think of these guys as like suit and ties, and they're the ones that like can control money, And we thought, okay, this is an industry that we can definitely be that gateway, that bridge between, right? It's like, okay, there's someone who wants to sell, who's been running their business for their entire life, and they need to get connected with the private markets, or they're getting purchased by a larger acquirer. Who is most going to be in need, and not because they can't do it themselves, but we can quickly get them up to speed with what needs to be done to make their company attractive. That was another criteria that we did. And then the other one that we used to kind of filter was, who are the people that we actually want to work with? Like because we've worked with so many industries, you just deal, and not to like throw other industries under the bus, but you deal with a lot of people that are just, you don't want to sit down and, have a beer with. Like, you just would never do that, right? And because of that, some of your day-to-day work isn't as enjoyable as it could be. And so this industry, like everybody we've worked with in this industry, has just really been great to work with. And when you're trying to develop a life and a career, and your work, the vast majority of the time that we spend is in our jobs, it's like, who do you really want to work with? So that's what kind of gave us a little bit of narrowing there, and why we landed on this particular industry, which was a good question. Yeah.
And one other thing, my final question is the Exit Plan Summit, which seems more broadly based than
Yes.
excavation. It's something else you do. So maybe you could tell me, I guess the last one already happened, but you can tell me what it is and when the next one's coming up.
Yeah, so the Exit Plan Summit was an event that last January we ran. We had 700 business owners out to it. And what I'd done for that event was got everybody who was at the top of their game that owned an M&A business, or with the mergers and acquisitions business, or was in that ecosystem. So you basically, the criteria for being a speaker was you had to have the largest company in your country in our industry. And we had 30 speakers at that. And so it drew out a lot of interest, and a lot of people from our industry came to it. But then, like I said, 700 business owners came to it. And mostly it was just to kind of explore and also discover, like help people discover, what does it actually look like to sell a business? And the primary question that we had posed to all of our guests was, if you had one thing that you were going to tell someone who was thinking about selling their company, what is that one thing you would tell them so they were guaranteed to have success? So, I mean, these people that we were interviewing have sold over 500 companies. And one of the guys was a CEO of Biz Buy Sell, which they're involved in, multiple thousands of transactions per year. And they're the largest database online for, business sales. So a lot of really good information that came out of that conference. And the question is, the other for you guys is, when is the next one happening? That I don't know. Like, that was a massive amount of work for us to put it on. And it basically took us 6 months of effort in my organization just to run that event. So whether we do it again, I don't know. We do a smaller event every single year that's more industry specific, called 10X Live. And that we run in September. And then also for people that are in the excavation space specifically, at the end of every single month, I run a micro event. I call it a round table, that we just get 20 business owners who are, kind of are thinking, in 5-10 years, they're thinking about selling. What exactly should they do with their business to set it up so that it's actually attractive to a buyer? Every single month, we do a small event at the end of the month. So that's always available for people in the excavation space.
Okay, and if people are looking to get involved with OpnRoad or to look at your social media, because you've got a bunch of that too, where would they go?
Yeah, I mean, I find that people in our industry are not as active on LinkedIn, but I am on LinkedIn, on Facebook, of course. And all you really need to do is go to Google and type in OpnRoad. It's OPN Road, so there's no E, it's just OPN Road. They can't see me, it's on my shirt, but anyway, they can just type that into Google. You're gonna find it. You're gonna find me. If you type in Scott Duke business sales, you'll definitely find me. It's like I've done a whole bunch of YouTube stuff. My YouTube persona is the happy deal maker.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Scott, on that note, thank you very much for joining us.
Warren, thanks so much.